and the moment you've all been waiting for. Let me introduce our speaker. Jimmy has been in the industry for 30 plus years, written 2 books. The latest is Applying Domain-Driven Design. He's also a founder and consultant of factor10, spends most of his time helping clients with value creation. Please put your hands together for Mr. Jimmy Nilson, everybody. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for the nice introduction and the invitation and for having me here. So well organized here at this conference. I just asked for where can I find a watch so I know if I have time left. Couldn't find it anywhere. Of course it's here. It's huge. I can't miss it. So just an example. So welcome to this presentation. I call it Dependencies. Are they devil or darling? And as some of you might guess, there is a little trick here. Trying to find words for saying domain-driven design, of course, because that's an important thing for me, and probably very helpful and important for all of you as well. I was already introduced, so let's skip that. So this presentation, I got the inspiration for it by something called SAFE. Anybody know about SAFE? In Sweden, it is really popular. Lots and lots of big companies are going there. To me, that's a bit surprising. I'm not a big fan personally, I have to confess. I can't talk about or think about SAFE without seeing Martin Fowler saying with emphasis, SAFE means shitty agile for enterprise. But this is not going to be a rant about SAFE, not at all. It was just that I saw it over and over again in SAFE situations. Something that I found that to be a bit strange. So I thought, let's investigate this a little bit. And what I think I saw over and over again, perhaps not the problem with SAFE, only how it was used in those situations that I saw, was that they spend an enormous amount of time talking about and doing administration of the dependencies. And I guess it's good to understand the dependencies, but they didn't do anything about them. And I thought that was really strange. Do you want to have those troublesome dependencies? Probably not. So from this point on, this is not about SAFE. I think actually dealing with dependencies is something we are doing on a daily basis, or should do actually. Doesn't really matter if you are in top management or if you're in a team. This is our work. This is stuff we need to think about and be good at. So I think the presentation will actually matter to most of us. So the agenda is like the following: a little quick introduction to why we should care about this at all. Then some problems with it. What are the well, maybe not so obvious problems at first. And we can't stop with the problem, of course. We are all solution-oriented, so we will focus the presentation on looking at different ways of dealing with it. So I think of this presentation as something that we are going to create a feeling of hope when we leave here. Because we're not victims under all those dependencies that are killing us. Of course not. We can take care of them. It's up to us. As long as we know what to do, when to do it, and, well, how. So let's have a look at a couple of ideas regarding this. But first off, why do we need to care at all about this? I guess some of you have read this book, hands up, Accelerate. A few of you. So the book is about how to become a high-performing organization for developing software, or delivering software actually. And this is not one of those other books, like my book for example, where I'm waving hands, talking about what I believe and my experiences from my little life. This is academic research. They have been looking at loads of examples for and studying that to well, increase the trustworthiness, I think. Luckily, I agree with basically everything they say, so it's quite nice read, you know, not taking you out of your comfort zone. You can just read it and do like this all the time. So really nice. I think I bought like 50 copies of this book because I always put it on the table of top management. When they are not around, I put it on the table and hope they will read it. When I've heard them do that, actually, they say, that actually makes sense. And, well, we can help top management to be a bit more educated. I think that's our work as software people as well. So they tell us lots and lots of stuff of what we can do to become better at software delivery. And why does that matter? Well, they see in their research that there is very strong connection between how well a company is doing their software delivery and how well that company is doing financially. They say it goes beyond correlation. It is predictive. They know if they are good at software delivery, they will be successful with their business, basically. And it's not just about the financial side, the organizational performance. It's also that the better the company is at software delivery, the more healthy the people in the organization is. So it's only win-win here. It's not about making people work till death. It's rather the opposite, actually. I think that's nice. Maybe not too surprising, I guess. But now we have it stated in a very trustworthy way, and we can refer to this without it's just our opinion. So one of the questions they answer is, what architecture should we have for getting good at software delivery? And they say that in bold here, we found that high performance is possible with all kinds of systems, provided that systems and the teams that build and maintain them are loosely coupled. So it doesn't matter if it's mainframe or whatever, as long as this stands. So it's important with software delivery performance for the organization, and to achieve it, we need to deal with the architecture in a good way. Again, not too surprising, but we have set the scene. Let's have a look at what could go wrong then. What could be the problems here? What's the devil regarding dependencies? I mentioned SAFe in the beginning, saying that they spend so much time on talking about dependencies, like one day every 3 months, every people will talk about this. Well, maybe not that big of a problem, actually. Just more like weird. Let's talk a little bit about our problems and do nothing about it. That's not really my thing. No, a much worse problem, of course, is, and I don't have research for this, this is more like a commonly said thing. I think you can have a feeling regarding this also. When you can't take care of something within your team, you have to ask another team. There is a tendency it will take like 10 times longer time. Have you seen something like that? As long you can do it on your own, it just flows and it's nice. If you ask the nice people over there, they will take care of it, but there is a tendency of everything slowing down, slow motion. Still not that bad. Even worse is when we actually get stuck. We are totally blocked. We can't do anything. It's not in our hands. It's that team over there, that not so nice team that is just skipping to help us out here. Or for some reason, don't listen to us. Don't help us. That could be very obvious, or it could be a little bit more subtle. Doesn't matter. This is killing our throughput, of course. So what is going on here? I have two different ways of organizing for creating some outcome. In this first case, I have looked at the company, and we have thought about how to organize ourselves for creating certain outcome. And we saw that we had 3 different specializations that we created into 3 different teams. They will hand over when the first team is done to the next, to the third, and finally it ends up with some kind of outcome. That's one way of doing it. And a very common way, I would say. Another way might be to, maybe if we think from the outcome and go backwards, as I said, maybe we end up with something like this. Not too surprising if you believe in DevOps, for example. We see that we are more organizing around a value stream. We have all the competency we need within one team to deliver it all. So more like a product or a focused team. And well, the path, as you see, looks a bit quicker. And well, there are less handoffs and less, as I said, it takes 10 more times when it's leaving the team. We don't have that. We are in the team all the time. Maybe this works out for us, and maybe this is better. But, well, we can't really say, of course. There's just a tendency of me thinking that the first one is more about doing some local optimizations. And the reason for that is that where the money goes. So each of those different teams, they have the budget on their own. And there will become a tendency for them to thinking a little bit more about themselves than the other teams. That is true for in the second organization style as well, but they have all they need for doing it. So it doesn't matter that they aren't thinking too much about their colleagues. Then you take the CFO and talk about this picture, and he says, I think it might be wasteful in the second scheme because they are duplicating certain things. That's true. But maybe that's not as big of a problem as having a really bad throughput. That's most often better. The same CFO actually had tried that out. I asked him, let's assume you have a problem that is really tricky. You have to deal with it. You have to solve it. Or it's a matter of life and death of your company. What would you do? Oh, that's easy, he said. I just take all the people I need, put them in the same room, I lock the door until they're done. That's the second one. He kind of knew it, but he couldn't really, it's wasteful for some reason. Anyway, you know the stories about how to measure things and things like that actually is playing into the local Optimi camp or the global Optimi camp. Of course, I believe we should optimize for outcome rather than being efficient in the certain specializations. Effectiveness over efficiency, or impact over efficiency even. My colleagues, they know how to really irritate me. They wrote this on Slack, 6 o'clock a Friday evening. I couldn't rest for the full weekend. They didn't put a question mark. They put a dash afterwards. No, Taylorism isn't the same as theory of constraints. To me, they are like opposite sides. So if you haven't studied Taylorism, that was invented like 120 years ago. We didn't have robots or automation. Instead, they came up with the idea, they wanted to have the same thing, automation, but we only have people. So let's treat those people like robots. Each person should only do a single simple thing, easy to teach. And when that person is, we have kind of hurt him, we just kick him out and put in a new person. It takes 5 minutes to teach that movement of a wrench like this. 8, maybe 10 hours a day. I'm not saying that was wrong at that point in time. I think, though, that this is super wrong in the case of knowledge workers doing software development. It's like you can only write E, and you should write F, and please hand over when you're done. No, we don't do that. And again, I don't know about you, but I see this quite often in Sweden. It's really strange. We learned this a long time ago. This is wrong for knowledge work. Try to write a book like that. You need 28 people, each writing one letter. Why on earth are you doing that to yourselves? I tell all those big companies in Sweden. And they continue. It's very efficient, they say. Very cheap also. If you hear the word resource being used about one of the developers or any person in the organization, then I know that's a Tayloristic company. And I do like this. Or I do like this. Let's talk a little bit. You shouldn't do this to yourself. So we will talk quite a lot about domain-driven design. Just a quick look into it here at first, and then we dive a bit deeper in 20 minutes from now, 15. So I think understanding a situation, I think that's quite helpful to see what is going on. If you understand something, you have solved the problem to 50%, something like that. So a quick early sketch. We will dive into this more later on. Here I have two different bounded contexts in a car rental system. Let's think about them as subsystems if you're not familiar with domain-driven design lingo. So our CRM subsystem is being used by, or the new rental bounded context is being depending on our CRM. Is this bad or good? Can you say something about it? Impossible to say. Exactly. Perhaps good. This seems to be like nice boundaries around them and clear dependency going in one direction. And yeah, perhaps good. We can't say actually. But there is, when we dive into this, we will see that there is something really ugly going on here actually. Impossible to say when looking at this. We will see soon what was the problem. Let's see if you can come up with it before I show you. So how do we not achieve what the accelerator told us about loose coupling then? 3 small examples we could try out. At first, we're trying extremely loose coupling, have lots of small pieces here. Each one of them, it's super simple. It's quite nice, actually. It's looking at it, I understand it immediately. Fine. So let's say we have 40,000 extremely small microservices. But I don't think this is the way to go, actually. I'm very hesitant personally. And I think there is something, in school at least, we had always heard about loose coupling coming in pair with high cohesion. I think that still rules. That's still correct. And when adding the dependencies in that picture, this wasn't 40,000. Let's assume that was a bigger number here. But it all immediately gets quite messy, I would say. So even though all those small things were very simple, the complexity has moved somewhere else. It's in between all those. So I'm not sure I will go in this direction. Let's try another one. So instead of splitting it up in small pieces, or the software, as I showed you now, maybe not have small teams either, loads of them. Why not have just a big, happy family, big team? That might solve it for us. Of course not. We can't find a silver bullet here that takes all our problems away. So when going in this direction, we will see there will be problems just because of the number of communication routes. So with 5 people in the team, it looks quite okay. Just doubling the number of people in the team to 10, it gets messy. If having hundreds instead, that would make like 5,000 communication connections. In the situation of this one, I think we have 45. I know now that you will start counting them and see if I missed one line. I might have done. Doesn't matter. But of course, this is not going to scale for us. What will happen now is that specialization will crop up within the team. And again, we have the dependencies. It hasn't gone away. It's just that it is in this big mess now. So really haven't solved the problem, I would say. And one more very common way of trying to solve this is to try to use an enterprise model, such as, let's define this once and for all, for the whole company, the whole enterprise, and everybody should rely on this model regarding customers and vehicles, maybe it was in this rental application. What happens when we do that, actually, is that we create a shared kernel, which is one of the patterns from domain-driven design, which actually means the tightest possible form of coupling. It's like the opposite to loose. So in this case, I have 3 different bounded contexts, and in the center I have this enterprise model describing how our vehicles and customers should look like, the type system, or the language regarding that. Kind of makes sense. Why have different definitions? They all need car, and they all need customer, for example. But that's actually like I would say this is on a dangerous path, wrong path even, because we create this tight coupling at first, so it's really hard to make a change to this enterprise model now, because we have to talk to all the 3 different bounded contexts and 3 different teams probably. If we can synchronize a change. Well, maybe we thought we could create it once and leave it like that forever. Hopefully that's not working out for us. That should mean that we have a very, very static business, and well, I don't believe in that. That's a safe way of going out of business. That's one problem. The other problem is that actually that model isn't correct for any of the different teams. They think of it slightly differently, all of them. The more they dig into it, the more their ideas of that model actually differs. So the challenge here isn't just to get in control of the dependencies between the different pieces, it's actually also how to design the different pieces and how to design the teams working on those. I realize now you're a bit tired of hearing about all the problems. Let's move over to see if we can find some solutions here. So, my favorite section. I will mix and match a couple of different concepts here, and then we will dive into domain-driven design a bit extra. But a couple of my favorite concepts over time. First one, extreme programming, over 20 years old now. Kent Beck actually brought us out from the dark ages when he wrote this book, I think, and changed the life for us as developers for forever and for the better. So what he actually did was looking at the situation and saying that, well, some of the things we're doing is actually helping us, some not so much. Let's only do what is helping us, and we do it to the extreme, to the full. And that turned out to be a success, as we all know. So, for example, there's full of concepts which helps us thinking and dealing with dependencies. One of them, I just picked one, is test-driven development. I think if you actually do that, it will guide you in the direction to deal with your dependencies in a very nice way. Automatically, it's almost like magic. You can't end up wrong when you do it with TDD, I would say. Maybe in the small, there are a bigger picture as well, but in the small, this helps a lot. Another of my favorite books is The Art of Action. When I was really young, like 18, I had 2 choices. I could do military services in Sweden or go to jail. That was the choice. I thought about it for a long time, and actually I decided to do military services. I was super reluctant because I thought that would be like the opposite to everything I believed in. It was worse. But I survived, I'm here. Then 25 years later, I find this book. It's about military philosophy from 150 years ago. And I realized, my God, they knew so much about stuff I really care about, such as how to organize for value creation, how to design microservices. It's really weird, actually. So I got loads of respect for militaries nowadays. Maybe not those I met when I did my service, but others. So this is very much about how to design your teams for coming to the outcome that you want in the best possible way. Not just once, it's long term as well. And it, for example, says that if you want autonomy, that requires that everybody really understands the upper purpose. Without that, you can't give autonomy. People will run in different directions. We all need to go in the same, of course. Strong tip for a book to read. Conway's laws. The law has been mentioned many times already. You probably know it by heart. I read it anyway. Any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So organization and architecture, it kind of goes hand in hand in some way. So if you change one of them, the other one has to change as well. And we can use this. If we want to have a certain architecture, we can design our teams in that way to get that architecture, or the other way around. Team topologies is taking this far. You will hear this on the keynote for tomorrow, much more about it. But I think this is another important piece in this sphere of how to think about those things. They mention a couple of anti-patterns. Don't do those. For example, loads of handoffs, really bad. Specialized silos. For example, here's the Unix team, there's the database team, there's the communication team, the VPN team. You might have seen that in big companies. You can't get anything done because you have to send a ticket to lots of teams. Each of one of them promised an answer in 2 days, if you're lucky. And it's super frustrating for me, at least. I just can't stand it. I mentioned resource before as one of those words that get my head make warning signs. I find that to be a bit scary, because then I know someone is calculating on Excel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and summing it up and knows that, oh, we have 5 here, let's move them there and everything is fine. It doesn't work like that, of course not. We know that. So shuffling people around instead of having somewhat stable teams, that's a clear path to get problems. Also, that old way of doing it, the development team writes all the code until version 1, hands over all the code to the maintenance team. I think that's a horrible way of doing it as well. It's in the same area. 15 years ago, I wrote an article. I think this is the worst named article I've written, at least. Chunk cloud computing. Somebody should have stopped me. Actually, Eric Evans tried to, and I said I was like a teenager protesting to his parents. I said, no, Eric, I will do it. Stupid idea. Anyway, it says quite a lot about how to organize for throughput as well. And I think, to me at least, this was, and still is, the reason for microservices. It's not about tech. It is about protecting the collaboration of flow. And well, I think that text has aged quite well, actually. So, over to domain-driven design finally. I think of this as a handbook for dependency management. We get so many different tricks for helping us out here. So the book has a part regarding strategic design and one for tactic design. Let's start with the strategic and have a look at a couple of pieces. You will recognize some of them from earlier in the presentation. So first of all, we are going to try to look at the company and see how it's organized from a business point of view, how the business think of themselves. And then we will put the software on top of that and see how it maps. Again, this rental company I mentioned before, it's, as you understand, it's very simplified, of course. But we have 3 different subdomains here. The domain is the whole company, everything it's doing. And it's been split up in 3 subdomains. They have the sales subdomain, which they have defined as the core subdomain, meaning that they think of that as the strategic part. That's where they put their emphasis. That's where they will try out new ideas. That's where they think they have or will have their competitive edge. At the bottom, they have the back office subdomain. It's called supporting here because it's, trying to help the sales subdomain, offloading stuff, supporting it for really making a difference for the company. Finally, we have the payments subdomain, which is considered to be generic. And that means that, we don't say that payments is not important. That's super important. It just has to work. But we don't think we need to be different than the competition. We can do it in the same way as the others are doing. That's what it means. And I think those are quite nice clues to the very old discussion about buy vs build. Quite often, you run into someone that says, we should actually buy everything. Well, I'm not sure. You want to be a bit different somewhere. So I think the core is a typical place for you to do custom development actually still, till this date. Quite many years ago now, but I asked a Gartner analyst what she thought about the future for software development. And at that point in time, they didn't believe in it at all. She said that actually, no, that's not something for the future. We have stopped doing that. We are buying off-the-shelf stuff now. And I was super depressed for a long time. But that's 10 years ago. I'm still writing code every day. So maybe that was, I probably I asked her the wrong question or put it in the wrong way. That was probably the case. So let's put some software on top here. So the software architecture is remarkably similar to the business architecture, we could say, in this case. So we have a boundary context called a new rental that is mapped nicely to the sales subdomain. And that goes for the other subdomains as well. In reality, it's not like this typically. It's much more messy. It's much more complex. But as a way of starting to think about this, we actually have software that is well aligned with the business, or not. If it's not, that might be a problem, probably. I mentioned boundary context a couple of times. So in the words of Eric Evans, explicitly define the context within which a model applies. Explicitly set boundaries in terms of team organization, usage within specific parts of the application, and physical manifestations, such as code bases and database schemas. Keep the model strictly consistent within these bounds, but don't be distracted or confused by issues outside. So it's like the opposite to the enterprise model that I talked about in the beginning, actually. This is very much about context is king. We don't care about the other subsystem over there. We are trying to optimize for what we need here. That's, I think, perfectly logical, actually. So remember I mentioned this model before, and I said, is this good or bad? And you said, well, actually, we can't say. It's impossible to say. It's actually still impossible to say, but we are diving into this a little bit more now with more patterns from domain-driven design. So what this tries to illustrate is that our CRM is exposing like an interface that is open for anybody to use, like an API. Use it or skip it. It's up to you. We don't care. It's standardized, or, well, we have only one. The new rental has decided to use that open host service. And right now, they are using the pattern called conformist, which means that the model we are getting from our CRM, it's actually going into new rental, and we are using it everywhere within new rental. So it's actually not, well, the model is one way of thinking about it. We are using the language that they are speaking over in our CRM, and we are taking it into our own situation. Could be a good thing. Maybe we need exactly the same thing as they are using over there. Most often, I would say, it's a bit, well, scary, maybe a strong word, but probably not the way we are want to go here. So quite often we say, actually, new rental, we don't want to have such a strong dependency on our CRM that we are using the same model as they are. That's a tight one. So we are going for an anti-corruption layer instead. And that is strictly about the model not going into our model within new rental. We are doing a translation or transformation at the border. So whatever they talk about at our CRM, it's only affecting us at the ACL level. And except for that, we are free. We have our own language, as we want it to. So I mentioned boundary context as one of the patterns. Ubiquitous language is maybe one of the other most commonly mentioned patterns from domain-driven design. To create a supple, knowledge-rich design calls for a versatile shared team language and a lively experimentation with language that seldom happens on software projects. So I was in Kitzbühel skiing many years ago with my wife and my youngest son, and we were standing in the queue waiting for a four-seater and talking to each other, chit-chatting. All of a sudden, there is a very small boy skiing up to us next to my wife, and we hear the ski teacher screaming for him, something like, Achtung, Achtung, bleib in der Gruppe. Actually, I don't speak German, but I think it was something like that. And my wife found this to be especially bad because she thought that every Austrian person in that group was looking at us as if we were kidnapping this boy. And well, that wasn't our intention, but she started doing like this, kicking him away, like a 5-year-old boy. That's a bit nasty. Anyway, he screamed back to his ski teacher, and then he turned over to us and said, Jag vill åka med er, which is Swedish and means I want to go with you. And he didn't know us. He had heard us speak for like 2 minutes in that crowd, and because we shared a language, he liked us so much that he wanted to hang out with us. And I thought, oh my God, this is so powerful. It's almost scary. And we can learn from this when talking to our domain experts. We shouldn't use words like dependency injection, higher order function, repository. Of course not. They go tired like this. Oh my God, they say. So if they don't have time for you, think about your language. Are you actually abusing the situation, talking software language instead of the domain language? So we solved the first problem of the conformist. The second one, I mentioned this shared kernel situation. Let's assume now that the new rental, they are just fed up with this situation. It's like having concrete on your feet. You can't move because you are stuck with this shared kernel. What to do about it? Well, it's software. It's easy to change. You will do whatever you would like to. You can fork it or try to create an anti-corruption layer to it instead. So it is actually doable to get out of the situation. It's not easy and it's not cheap, maybe, but maybe worth it. So we are not victims here. We can make a change. Actually, platforms, something I'm being a bit quick of introducing, might have slightly the same tendency. We invent the platform and we kind of create this situation a bit too early. I think it's a good idea to harvest platforms rather than inventing them. Third situation, customer and supplier relationship working out gracefully. Those two teams are really helping each other out on a daily basis. They love each other. They are doing their best to create success. Until one day, one person in the new rental team is nagging about the fleet management team. Why aren't you using TDD, you lazy idiots, and things like that. The manager of the fleet management team, he gets fed up. And he says, actually, we might not help you any longer. Well, this is stuff that happens, actually, at least in my life. Maybe my life is more dramatic or drama-full than yours, but I think I see this quite often, actually. Again, we can get out of this situation. It might be as easy as getting friends again and talking nice to the other group. Why should you shame them? That's typically not a good thing to do. Or maybe we have to go separate ways and get out of this. That was a couple of ideas regarding strategic design. I had one on tactical also, but I'm running out of time, so let's wrap up. So, of course, as you knew from the beginning, dependencies could be both devil and darling. It's up to you to decide. It's totally in your hands. And you can't just point up and say it's a management problem. Actually, they need your help. They need help from the developers who is in this mess all the time. And of course, the business and domain experts are your best inspiration and friends for taking care of this and changing this into a better situation. That was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, for your talk. We have time for one question. If you could, here on the monitor, we have a couple to choose from.
Oh.
Could you pick the question and read it out for the people on the stream?
Are you sure those are for me? Really hard questions. Okay, let's say you're a big telco company that relies heavily on open source. What's 3 PPS? Oh, open source third parties. How could you ensure the stability of your products on the long run? Well, yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. So, well, I guess being involved in those open source projects would be one way of doing it, not just expecting someone else to take care of it for you. And of course, shielding yourself with anti-corruption layers might be another one. That maybe that those open source products aren't really in that direction, that it is an anti-corruption layer that helps you. But overall, I find it scary to depend too much on a framework or directly. I'd like to be a bit abstract on that. So that I would definitely go in that direction. Or it is software and you have great tests. You can change it. The tests will carry you or guide your back, take care of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Jimmy. We have a little gift for you. Oh. A very nice Budapest notebook, plus an artist has done a rendering of you.
Oh.
And this is our gift to you.
Thank you very much.
Please, one more time for Jimmy Nilson, everybody.